Welcome to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. I think what makes Be More News different is that it's not uncommon for us to interview people, in the community, people down on the street, the everyday person. For me, that's what the news coverage has to be about, especially here in the city of Baltimore. Nobody is speaking about the man on the ground, the woman, grassroots, the woman in the community. And really, the work means nothing. And despite the negativity, it still showed how beautiful Baltimore is, because the people showed who we are. People showed the love. Somebody said it like this: Baltimore's the kind of city that if somebody sees you down, they're bound to pick you up. That's what we do. And Freddie Gray was significant in that it was the first time in some, 47 years or so that Baltimore had a riot. In terms of what work that I personally am most proud of, I would say clearly it had nothing to do with journalism. It had to do with our prison ministry, the Love for L prison ministry. And we went to visit 14 to 17-year-olds charged with adult crimes over at Central Booking. And on at least 3 occasions, 3 of these young men came up to me on the streets and said, thank you. Thank you for coming, getting us out ourselves. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for taking the time for us. We're doing better now. Each one of them said it. And honestly, it was the most rewarding feeling ever. Another key story was Robert Lee Clay. This was a black contractor, businessman who was very active in the community, the biggest advocate for black business to ensure that black people got a fair share of the contracts coming out of City Hall, coming out of Annapolis for the state. And the low down dirty law enforcement people said that this self-made millionaire who had a pocket full of money, who was right-handed, was somehow gonna kill himself right where he meets his daughter at every day. And the bullet goes in the left side of his head when he's a righty. I can tell you that 7 years after Freddie Gray, that was 2015, spring, April, May, this is 2022. Communities like Sandtown, all we saw then and now in terms of investment was a renovated Western District Police Station and a new funeral home. That's what West Baltimore got. A new police station and a new funeral home. What kind of optics are they? Clearly the biggest story over the past 20 years has been Freddie Gray. And when you think about it, Freddie Gray was the culmination of years of frustration here in Baltimore. People annoyed with the police and the policing tactics as has been stereotyped on a lot of the television shows and movies. Freddie Gray was that is the climax, if you will, after years of one community being giving the best of resources, the most investment. They call it the White L, goes from Johns Hopkins down to the harbor over the East Harbor to Canton, versus the Black Butterfly, which has been starved, deprived, neglected. Poor schools. Not poor from money, but poor and in lack of love. When I hear people today, Fox is doing a series of exposés on Baltimore City public schools. I came through these schools. Matter of fact, these schools are getting more investment now than back in my day, but the product is inferior. This is unacceptable, and that for me is what Freddie Gray highlighted. Instead of a positive story, Freddie Gray just brought all of the negatives together at one point. Police corruption to poor elected officials in terms of their mindset, their management of Baltimore City. A lot of people claim to know what the solution is, but it's real simple. You can't starve one community and then flood another community with resources. What do you expect to happen? I would say one of the worst things I've ever had to cover is political corruption, particularly in the black community. I think it's a smack in the face of the black community when our black elected officials get hemmed up in foolishness over petty amounts of money or even large amounts of money. At the end of the day, it's a betrayal of public trust. And for me, that speaks to a whole issue, a whole line of issues when it comes to the mental health of black elected officials. You can't go into politics if you're trying to get rich. At least theoretically, that's not what it's supposed to be about. Theoretically, it's supposed to be about public service. It's supposed to be about the people. That's what it's supposed to be about, not about one's own ascension, whether they're white or black. A lot of times I see politicians, black and white, they get a position, and before mastering that position, they're already looking at the next position. And it's like, slow down. You can't run. This is a process. You learn. You got to learn along the way. Because if you haven't mastered, the good Lord said, the book said, you got to be a master over your smaller blessings before you're given bigger, larger territory to manage. But we got this syndrome where we want to go straight to the top. And then when we get there straight to the top, it's evident we don't know what the hell we're doing. For the past 7 years, Baltimore has been suffering from a consent decree. Consent decree essentially has the police, since Freddie Gray, taking a knee. Local television wants to pose a question: whose fault is the crime spree in Baltimore? Is it the mayor? Is it the state's attorney? Is it the police commissioner? I would say that the real answer is that the ultimate reason behind this lawlessness in Baltimore right now is the police and its mishandling of the black community. So, like a little kid who can't play, they're going to take their ball and go home. They just going to show up and not do any work. So now people have a real lawlessness about them, a real sense of entitlement. And at the end of the day, everyday people are held hostage in the community, because where we used to have plainclothesmen that would jump out on anybody, people were less likely to carry a gun. And now, with the Police not checking everybody's strapped. And so the everyday citizen is put in a real quagmire. And then you have this inundation of non-black addicts in the black community searching for dope, getting high, going up in the vacants. And so, Baltimore's real off the hook right now. Suggestions I've made for mayor didn't help. And so, here we are. I think another important story that we have made it our business to stay on is politics. Back in 2002, we were the only news outlet to cover Robert Ehrlich and Michael Steele. Let me say we were the first, particularly here in the city of Baltimore, particularly in the black community. Baltimore's a 9-1 Democratic town. The state of Maryland is 2-1 Democrat. And so Michael Steele, wasn't going to make any traction from a traditional standpoint. But again, this is when the internet was coming about 2002. And we had that website out there, Be More News. We were having events in the community, so we weren't just dependent on our digital presence. We were actually making a footprint in the community, hosting the Harambe Dinner Club. Black Wall Street Awards hadn't come about at that point. We were hosting Harambe dinner clubs, business networking events in Baltimore and Prince George's County. And I can tell you that when Ehrlich came in, one big plus was Coppin State. Coppin State got more money than it had ever received, ever in its history. And this happened with a Republican governor. When I look at what is currently being done, again, it's a Republican governor. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, 14 of the past 22 years we've had 12. 12 of the past 22 years we've had a Republican governor. And I've seen progress in the black community that I've not seen under Democrats. So I guess the point is that we've tried to enlighten people on our political options. Too often the black community is neglected by Democrats here in the state of Maryland. And that's what we've pushed. We've pushed for progress. And so 20 years later, we have a black woman who's the Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones out in Baltimore County. We got another guy from Dunbar, from East Baltimore, who's out in Baltimore County in Randallstown, Julian Jones. He has become the second black councilman. Now he's the council chair. And there are more blacks running for different districts in Baltimore County than ever before. We have a black man running for governor, a serious candidate in Westmore. We got a black man running for attorney general in person of Anthony Brown. And we got a black man running for comptroller of the state of Maryland, Tim Adams. I think it's progress.